This year, conservatism must shed the weight of Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, and Candace Owens. Every January, Americans make the same New Year's resolution. They say they're going to lose some weight. Not because they hate themselves, not because they want to punish themselves, but because they understand something fundamental. Excess weight weakens you. It strains the heart. It clouds judgment. It shortens your life. And the conservative movement is carrying weight that is not just unhealthy, but risky. And I want to say this clearly, slowly, and without apology. Fuentes, Carlson, and Owens are not conservatives. They are not misunderstood conservatives. They are not edgy conservatives. They are anti-conservative. Before the predictable accusations start, let me be very clear. This is not cancellation. This is not censorship. This is not a call to silence anyone. I want all of them to keep speaking. Freedom of speech does not weaken conservatism. It exposes what does not belong. By them continuing to speak, they expose themselves. But disassociation is not cancellation. And refusing to let anti-conservatives redefine conservatism is not cruelty. It is survival. For years now, we've repeated a phrase like a spell, no fighting on the right. But here's the truth that phrase has been shielding. You cannot preserve a movement if you refuse to identify who is actively dismantling it from within. No fighting on the right doesn't even apply to these individuals since they are no longer on the right. Conservatism is not a personality cult. It is not a vibe. It is not an algorithm. It is a moral, philosophical, and constitutional tradition. And at the center of that tradition always has been building families, institutions, coalitions, and continuity across generations. So let's start with Nick Fuentes. Fuentes does not want to conserve America. He wants to undo it. He has openly argued that women should not have the right to vote, calling women's suffrage a mistake and insisting political authority belongs exclusively to men. A Fuentes-led movement would not debate policy, it would strip rights. It would tell American women, mothers, daughters, professionals, veterans, that they are second-class citizens. That is not conservatism. That is an authoritarian regression. Fuentes has also spoken favorably about undoing civil rights protections for Black Americans, treating equal citizenship not as moral progress, but as a historical error. He's praised Jim Crow, saying that segregation was better for Black Americans. His American, in his words, is a white Christian nationalist. And then there is the most damning contradiction of all. Conservative has always said the nuclear family is the cornerstone of civilization. We have said broken homes produce broken outcomes, and that the answer is repair, mentorship, responsibility, and presence. Fuentes does none of that. He does not encourage marriage as service. He does not promote fatherhood as duty. He does not tell men to build, protect, and sacrifice. Instead, he tells young men to withdraw. He has told his audience that when they see an African American man, they should assume danger and walk the other way. Ask yourself, how do you fix broken homes by avoiding people? How do you heal communities by retreating from them? How do you build families by teaching fear and resentment? Conservatism has always said the opposite. Men do not flee disorder. They bring order. Fuentes teaches isolation. Isolation does not produce families. It produces bitterness. That is not conservatism. Now Tucker Carlson. For years it was conservatives, not the left, who forced America to say one uncomfortable phrase, radical Islam. Barack Obama refused to say it. The left mocked it. They called it Islamophobic. They insisted terrorism had nothing to do with ideology. And conservatives were right. We said words matter. We said ideas matter. We said you cannot defeat an enemy you refuse to name. That moral clarity was conservatism. Now listen to Tucker. He minimizes the threat of radical Islam. He blurs the distinction. He suggests concerns are exaggerated or fabricated. He has even falsely claimed that very few Americans have been attacked by Islamist terrorism since 9/11. A claim that collapses under basic scrutiny. So ask the unavoidable question, which side does that sound like? Because when you move from we must name radical Islam to defeat it to radical Islam isn't a real threat, you haven't evolved, you've crossed over. A movement guided by that worldview would not defend Western civilization, it would anesthetize it. That is not conservatism, that is retreat. Now Candace Owens, and this is where the damage becomes institutional. Turning Point USA is arguably the most successful grassroots conservative organization of the modern era. It didn't just tweet, it didn't just commentate, it organized. It built campus chapters, it trained young leaders, it created infrastructure where conservatives had been losing ground for decades. There is a strong argument, one the left clearly believes, that Turning Point played a decisive role in recent conservative victories. Why do you think the left obsesses over it? Why do you think they try to destroy it? Why do you think they fear it? Because it worked. And Candace Owens appears determined to finish the job for them. Not by reforming it, not by improving it, but by publicly torching it. Her attacks are not about ideas. They are not about strategy. They are about grievance. So here's the question she never answers, and neither do her defenders. What's the replacement? If you burn down the most effective youth infrastructure conservatives have ever built, what comes next? Where do the students go? Who trains them? Who organizes them? Who shows up on campuses? There is no answer. Because destruction is easy. Building is conservative. Candace offers no alternative institution, no replacement strategy, no plan to win the next generation. Just scorched earth. That is not conservatism. That is nihilism with a microphone. Here is the pattern tying all three together. They do not build. They do not conserve. They do not repair. They fracture families. They undermine institutions. They attack coalitions. They reward grievance. And then they call it courage. So we have to ask the final uncomfortable question. What about any of this is conservative anymore? What is being conserved? What is being passed on? What is being strengthened? Not families, not institutions, not the country, just personalities, just outrage, just wreckage. If these people ever led the conservative movement, we would not just lose elections, we would lose legitimacy. We would become radioactive to normal Americans. We would implode into factions and purity cults. We would invite backlash and deserve it. Because conservatism is not about tearing everything down. It is about preserving what works. It is not about grievance. It is about gratitude. It is not about resentment masquerading as courage. It is about responsibility carried with humility. If your worldview strips rights instead of strengthening families, you are not a conservative. If your worldview minimizes threats instead of defending civilization, you are not a conservative. If your worldview burns institutions without replacing them, you are not a conservative. Let them speak. Let them reveal themselves. And let us walk away. That is not weakness. That is discipline. That is conservation. So here's the New Year's resolution. Lose the weight. Lose the voices that tear down instead of build. Lose the personalities that profit from chaos instead of continuity. Lose the lie that every loud voice on the right belongs in the conservative tent. A healthier movement is not a bigger one. It is a clearer one. And clarity, not outrage, is how conservatism survives. That is not cancellation. That is conservation. And it is long overdue. Hey, we the people like Garcia, so that's no excuse.